Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhare Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhare Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaurabhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaurabhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Gopinath Radha Gopinath Jaya Radhe Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Guru Deva Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Guru Deva Guru Deva Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Narayana Namaskritya Naranjayva Naruttamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Chachodayam Mudirayit Nastapraya Swabhadrisu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utama Sloki Bhakti Bhagavati Nastiki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Agyanam Dhrumanandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajevam Sadvitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namasute Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vanchakapatarupischa Kripasindupevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Jagaguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Hare Krishna everyone. Welcome to this morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. And we're going to continue our reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 9, text number 8, entitled The Passing Away of Bhishma Dev. Sanskrit recitation. Anye chamunayo brahman, brahmarata dayo mala, sisyar upeta ajam muhu, kasyapangira sadaya. Anye chamunayo brahman, brahmarata dayo mala, sisyar upeta jagamu, kasyapangira sadaya. Once more. Anye chamunayo brahman, brahma rata dayo mala, sisyarupetya ajakmuhu, kasyapangira sadaya. Word for translation. Anye, many others. Cha also. Munaya, sages. Brahman, or brahmanas. Brahmarata, Sukadev Goswami, Adaya, and such others. Amala, completely purified. Sisyai, by the disciples. Upetya, accompanied. Ajak Muhu arrived. Kasyapa, Kasyapa. Angirasa, Angiras. Adaya, and others. Purpose. And many others like Sukadev Goswami, translation. And many others like Sukadev Goswami and other purified souls, Kasyapa and Angira and others, are accompanied by their respective disciples. All accompanied by their respective disciples arrived there. So this is on the bedstead of Bhishma Dev, where all these great saintly souls are coming to wish him farewell, to give him his last association and last respect. And this couple of days we've been talking about death, what happens to us during the time where we are undergoing this transitional period of death. What is actually death? How do we understand the conception of death? And also what happens to the soul after we die? So this particular verse talks about Bhishma Dev, when Bhishma Dev was quitting his body, how all these great saintly souls came to kind of pay their last respect, not just pay their last respect, but then also wish him, all the best, and get to hear the last instructions that Bhishma Dev would give. I always say that it is wonderful to be born under auspicious circumstances. It is wonderful to have a very wonderful birth. Sometimes we are born in a rich aristocratic family. Sometimes we are born in a heavenly body. Sometimes we are born, with favorable conditions. Sometimes we're even born as devotees or into the family of saintly people. That is all right. That is quite wonderful. But what is most important is how we die. We might be born with auspicious circumstances. We might be born with wonderful, I mean, opportunities. But then what we make of that opportunity is what kind of justify what we are going to go after we quit this body. So death is something which is quite it's quite factual, but it's always overlooked. Sometimes we pretend it's not there just because we are fearful of death, and whenever we hear of death, it gives us some kind of, I mean, we get quite tensed. So therefore, we want to always brush it off and pretend it isn't there, so we can have peace to do whatever we think we are doing, which we know is contrary to the laws of nature. But the ostrich has this crazy action that it does whenever it comes into contact with a life-threatening situation. The ostrich would dig the ground and put its head there and cover it with sand, thinking that if I do not see, then it is not there. So we might try to, cover up. We might try to do a lot of things to pretend as if that is not there. But that is one of the realities of life, that we are all going to die one day. So here we're going to understand the life of Bhishma Dev. This is kind of, the title is is the passing of Bhishma Dev. So usually when the funeral celebration is going on, or whenever the loved one is quitting his body, It's not really, it's seen as a very tense time. It's seen as a very sad moment. But here we are going to learn a lot of, life lessons from here, that we don't just see the sentiments, or we don't just feel the sentiments, how sad it is losing a beloved one, but what we can learn from that, and kind of, I mean, better ourselves, with that lesson that we are seeing, or we are, coming in contact with. So we're going to take Srila Prabhupada's purpose with this particular text of the Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 9, text number 8. We read 6 to 7 yesterday. Okay, so in the purport, Sukadev Goswami Brahmarata, the famous son of the disciple of Shri Vyasadeva, who taught him first the Mahabharata and then Srimad Bhagavatam. Shukadev Goswami recited 1,400,000 verses of the Mahabharata in the council of the Gandharvas, the Yakshas, the Rakshasas, and he recited Srimad Bhagavatam for the first time in the presence of Maharaj Parikshit. So Maharaj Parikshit is another important figure. Of course, Sukadev Goswami is also it's not quite, he's an important figure. Why? Because both of them played a very essential, part of history, with which we're even reading now. That Maharaj Pariksit was cursed, and then he was being told he's going to die within 7 days. So now the question is, if we were to be in the shoes of Maharaj Parikshit, that somehow or the other, or by providential arrangement, it has been ordained, or we have been cursed to live for only 7 years. What would we do with those 7 days? 7 days, what are we going to do with those 7 days? And Maharaj Parikshit, actually, the whole 7 days, devoted his entire senses, his mind, his body, and his very self as the soul to, I mean, to to remind himself of the reality of life. That life is not just about living our professional duties, or having our familiar responsibilities and all that, or cultural or national, or all these designations that we find ourselves in. But then the reality is, what did we, or how did we kind of connect with our maker? So in his last days, or within the 7 days, that was his thoughts, how he can actually reflect on his maker, how he can think of Krishna, how he can mold his life in such a way that at least within that 7 days, he can quit his body, knowing well that he actually completed the mission of life. So actually, we are all living the life of Shukadev Goswami. All of us have 7 days to live. Yes, some of us might be frightened, or we might be thinking this is a crazy guy trying to curse us or something. But of course, that is the reality. We all have 7 days in a week, right? And within that 7 days, we are all going to die in one of those 7 days. So we should not be thinking that we have so much to live for, we have so much time. But then in actuality, all of us have 7 days, 7 days to live. Yes, as sadistic as it sounds, that is the reality. So the point is, what are we doing with these 7 days that we have been blessed with? Yes, so Sukadev Goswami then recited the Srimad Bhagavatam, what we are reading now, to Maharaj Parikshit, to kind of purify his consciousness, so that he can be able to die in consciousness of Krishna. And so therefore the hearing process is extremely important. Yesterday we talked about it, that I mean it is important that we utilize our hearing for that which it is actually meant for, which is to hear about Krishna or God. So these are, I stopped it because these are quite important figures, in the Bhagavatam. So we continue Srila Prabhupada's purport. He thoroughly studied all the Vedic literatures from his great father. Thus, he was a completely purified soul by dint of extensive knowledge in the principles of religion. From Mahabharata Sappa Parva 4, chapter 4, text 11, it is understood that he was also present in the royal assembly of Maharaj Yudhishthira, the fasting um, of Maharaj Parikshit. As a bona fide disciple of Sri Vyasadeva, he inquired from his father very extensively about religious principles and spiritual values. And his great father also satisfied him by teaching him the yoga system by which one can attain the spiritual kingdom. The difference between the fruitive work and empiric knowledge, and the ways and means of attaining spiritual realization, the four ashramas, namely the student's life, the householder life, the retired life, and the renounced life. The sublime position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the process of seeing Him eye to eye. Wonderful. The bona fide candidate for receiving knowledge, the consideration of the five elements, and the unique position of intelligence, the consciousness of the material nature and the living entity, the symptoms of the realized soul, and the working principles of the material body, the symptoms of the influence of the laws of nature, and the three perpetual desires and psychic activities. Prabhupada is saying a lot of things. I mean, just these things he mentions, they are just a whole kind of spectrum on its own. But he kind of, I mean, Prabhupada is an expert writer. He's a prolific writer. He's a scholar. His intelligence is, I mean, it's quite captivating. He's putting a whole lot of, it's like the whole universe within a small atom, which is actually what is happening. So, I mean, Prabhupada is explaining how Shukadev Goswami, I mean, received instructions from his spiritual master about the science of life. And life, in this sense, has different categories: the material, the subtle, and the spiritual. So let's try to see if we can, I mean, take it one after the other. So first, Prabhupada talked about that Vyasadeva received, or because Shukadeva Goswami received instructions on the ashramas. We have four ashramas or house, I mean, the material designations or stages of life. Which the first is called the student's life, which is called actually the brahmacharya life, where one actually undergoes studying his self, his personality, studying the other person that he's seeing, and then studying the world around him, studying also his source from where he actually came from into being. So that is the first stage of life, which is called the brahmacharya or the student's stage, which actually begins from the age of 5 to, I mean, 25. That is meant for studying. But in these days, yes, of course, we actually start studying like from basic school, start from class one, start from 5 years. Then it is assumed that like 25 years you're supposed to be done with your degree or whatever. But then what do we learn when we go to these schools? We teach us what we should be. We should be a doctor, we should be a pharmacist, we should be an engineer, we should be an accountant, you should be this, you should be that. But they do not tell us why. Of course, sometimes they give us a glimpse of the whys. They tell us that if you do not go to school to learn all this stuff, you'll not be a responsible person in society to be able to take care of yourself and take care of others. But then it still does not satiate the longing of the soul to look for a source. Therefore, going to our academic institutions are lacking a very important um, department which we are not really highlighting, or probably we do not really care of its existence, which is the department of the soul. We have the various departments of physics, departments of applied sciences, departments of um I mean, what do you call it, the sociology, psychology, all these departments of fields. But then very often we do not talk about the department of the soul. I mean, which talks about the reality of life, which talks about we as our original self, and what the soul needs to know or to learn to actually better himself or to even understand himself. We do not teach about the science of self-realization, who we are and what we are not. So In this student's life, actually, it's meant for us to gather information, to understand the world around us, to understand who we are, to understand, where we are coming from, to understand our source, and to be able to, kind of connect the dots. And once the dots is connected, then we can actually start living life. But then, funny enough, um these things are not talked about. So then we have the household life. The household life is a life where one actually accepts a wife or a husband, and they are living under under one understanding, helping each other to really uplift ourselves in our spiritual pursuits, as well as managing our material affairs. Then the next stage is what we call the retired life, where one goes to retirement. Usually in the material world, when we say retirement, we're only thinking about retirement from our material or occupational duties. Like let's say you are a banker, and at the age of 60 or 50 years, depends on the country, we say you reach the retirement age. Retirement age means that you are no longer useful to the economy some way or the other. So, they advise you to step aside so fresh blood comes in and try to, I mean, work things out. So, that is actually a universal principle that at some stage of life, we should actually step out the box. We should step out the vicious cycle. We should step out to what we perceive to be normal, where we are doing so many, a loop. We wake up, we go to work, we take care of our children, we do this, we try to accumulate wealth, fame, prestige, and we go to sleep and all that. But then we then retire from all this crazy stuff, the rat race, and try to focus on the art of dying. That is where we are actually trying to quit the body and then uh, kind of unite with our maker. So then that is the retired life. Then we proceed to the renounced order. The renounced order, in this sense, is when we are perfectly aloof from the material world and its designations, and we are actually interested only in knowledge of the absolute, or activities which is going to reunite us with our maker. Then, Sylvia yesterday, Prabhupada talked about the sublime position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We understand who is God and who are we, and what is the distinction between we and God. Some people claim that they are God, that now they have not really realized their godly nature or their godly self. So when some or the other there is this aha moment, then they become God, which is quite crazy. A God who forgets he's God. I don't know how much of a God that is. So we understand who God is and who we are, the distinction, how we can actually, I mean, understand the connection between we and our Maker. So then, the process of seeing him eye to eye, and this is where it comes quite funny. Most people are thinking that it is impossible to see God, right? That nobody can see God. It is crazy to think that you can see God. Of course, who are you to see God? But it is possible, actually. It is possible by purification. It's possible by the parts, by the science of spirituality, by being able to live the discipline of our godly nature. We would have the ability to actually have the purified vision to see God. So it is not far fetched when we talk about seeing God. It is possible, actually. It is possible to see Him. It is possible to feel Him. It is possible to touch Him. It is possible to smell Him. It is possible to even eat Him. Yes. And they say that God actually is scattered throughout every particle of an atom or of an element. And therefore, what we call breath, or what we are breathing in, breathing out, what we are seeing is actually the touch of God. Everything is signed with the touch of God. But then it requires us to have that broader vision, to be able to see that actually God is everywhere. But then how are we able to actually see between the lines, to see between the distractions, and actually pinpoint to the reality of seeing God as who He is? So it is possible. It is not far fetched. It is not a crazy phenomenon. It is a reality that is possible to actually see God when one develops the purified vision or purified consciousness. The next thing is the bona fide candidate receives knowledge. Yes, knowledge of the absolute helps us to understand. I mean, who we are, our relationship with God, like we said, and how to connect the dots. And where are we? Yes, the consideration of the five elements. Yes, we have five gross elements: fire, air, water, earth, ether, and understanding how they both react or how they all react with each other to to form this material body that we have, or different types of material bodies. Actually, it is said that there are 8.4 million species of life, and with these species of life, they all have different ways with which these five elements react with each other to form these 8.4 million species of life. The unique position of the intelligence, the consciousness of the material nature, and the living entity. So we have to understand what is an intelligence. What's the difference between intelligence, consciousness, and the mind? And being able to understand that when we talk about intelligence, it's not the IQ, it's not the intelligent quotients that which we think if you're able to grasp a lot of things, if you have a photographic memory, that is not the intelligence that we're talking about. There's this subtle intelligence which has to do with, drawing the distinction between right and wrong. That is refined intelligence. And also, what is proper to say? Yeah, the nature of the living entity. Who are we? What is the constituents of the soul? And where does the soul come from? What is our identity? You know, and the symptoms of the realized soul. If one becomes awakened of his dormant position as the soul part and parcel of God, what are the symptoms? What actually kind of shows that one is actually realized? The working principles of the material body, how the various ingredients of the body interact with each other to create karma or action and inactions, actions which are forbidden, actions which has no reaction, and so forth. And where is it? And the symptoms of the influential modes of material nature. Yes, we have three modes of material nature: the mode of ignorance, the mode of passion, the mode of goodness. And these modes actually they are working on the conditioned soul. So sometimes we're in the mode of goodness, sometimes in ignorance, sometimes we are in passion, sometimes also we have a mixture. It's like a cocktail of the modes where they are all acting on us at a particular time or at a goal. And understanding these, how these three modes of material nature kind of work on the soul. And sometimes, where is it? Sometimes he wants the sun planet with the permission of his father, and Naradaji. The description of his travel in space are given in the Shanti Parva of the Mahabharata 332. At last, he attained the transcendental realm, and he is known by different names like Arineya, Arusuta, Vaisakhi, and Vyasatmaja. So then we can understand that the sun planet also has living entities staying there. It is not just a ball of fire, which is in space, which is giving light and heat. No. It is also a planetary body where other living entities are actually staying on the sun. Fun fact. If you did not know, they are beings on the sun. Don't ask me how are they able to stay on the sun. Yes, they are able to stay on the sun because they have the appropriate body to be on the sun. Just like we on the earthly sphere, we have earthly body, and therefore we're able to kind of comfortably live on this planet. Therefore, those in the fire, on the sun planets have fiery bodies. So it is not so far fetched to understand that they can have the ability to stay on the sun planets. So of course there are living entities of a fiery body who are staying on the sun. Description. Okay, we've read this. Kashyapa. Now we're talking about Kashyapa Muni. One of the Prajapatis is the son of Marichi, and one of the sons-in-law of Prajapati Daksha. He is the father of the gigantic bird Garuda, who was given elephants and tortoise as Itavos. He married 13 daughters of Prajapati Daksha, and the names are Aditi, Diti, Danu, Kashta, Arishta, Surasa, Ila, Muni, Kuruda, Kurudavasa, Tamra, Sarabi, Sarama, and Timi. He begot many children, both demigods and demons, by those wives. From his first wife, Aditi, please listen to this is quite interesting. From his first wife, Aditi, all the 12 Adityas were born, and of them is Vamana, the incarnation of Godhead. The great sage Kashyapa also was also present at the time of Arjuna's birth. He received a presentation of the whole world from Parasuram, and later on he asked Parasurama to go out of the world. And his other name is Arishtanemi. He lives on the northern side of this universe. And this Kashyapa, he is the father of all the demonic, entities, as well as the divine, as well as the demigods. So Kashyapa Muni has the two prominent wives actually amongst them. We have the Diti and then Aditi. So Aditi, he from Aditi came forth the demigods or the celestial bodies, the angels, the demigods. That is what we normally call them. And from Diti came forth the demons, we call them the asuras, the daityas, So this is kind of how where from which the demon species came from, and from where from it was is actually the father of the demons as well as that of the the demigods. So that is Kashyapa. He's quite a very powerful fellow. He's called a Prajapati. Prajapati means they are progenitors. They are the ones who populate the universe. They have that specific task to populate. And yes, so from him, if you wonder where the demons come from, and people sometimes think that demons are from they are from, I don't know, they were cursed from heaven and then they fell down and they became demons and all that. But there are people who actually created, like they were born demonic. It's not like they were divine sometime in history and then some or the other by the influence of providence they became demonic. No, they are actually born with demonic consciousness. Why? It is said that Kashyapa Muni, his wife Diti, desired to have intimacy with his husband at an inauspicious time of the day, and therefore gave birth to the deities or the demons. Therefore, it is quite important that as married men, we should be careful with what we are doing, because procreation means that we are breaking forth progeny. So I used to tell people that the intimacy or the procreation within a man and a wife, it is like a portal to this universe or to this world or to this planet. And the time, the consciousness of both the father and the mother, the two, people, how they are interacting, their consciousness with it, they have the mind, the place, the time, the heart influence on the kind of soul that they are going to invoke on this planet. So, we no wonder we are having a lot of paracetamol and codeine babies. They are quite difficult to control. Why? Because not to be too strong, but then some are having a lot of, they're having demonic consciousness. They are not. That is why you see a son who would draw a dagger, a wife on the mother to kill him, go to kill her. And then you give birth to one child, you begin to wonder, where did this child even come from? He does not, he resembles you in kind of your physique, but then in terms of character, it looks like it's a different ball game altogether. And you are so confused, you're frustrated, he's tormenting your life like anything. And then sometimes you want to blame somebody or somewhere from, but then we should know that the time with which intimacy happens has influence on the kind of soul that we bring to this universe. Therefore, we should be careful that we should be responsible parents, and that means that we should know that science of sex life is not just it's not a sport like these days it is being assumed. It's not an entertainment, but it's actually a spiritual activity of bringing forth souls to this planet, and therefore it should be done um, knowing or with full knowledge, and it should not be done whimsically or as an accident. Sometimes that happens that, I mean, the the boy and the girl will meet, they have intimacy somewhere or the other. The girl will tell the boy, "Oh, I am pregnant," and you say, How are you pregnant?" Well, then, my friend, you know what happens when pregnancy, what causes pregnancy. So we don't plan. We think that family planning is when you put some drug on your arm, or you try to take some contraceptive to prevent pregnancy, or yeah, I mean, that is not family planning. Family planning means that you are aware of these things, and that you plan your life in such a way that you bring forth children who are going to increase the godly population of the world, and not increase these, I mean, demons that we're having today. So yes, that is how come these, I mean, the demigods and the demons came about. Angiras, he is a son of Maharishi Angira, and he is known as Brihaspati, the priest of the demigods. The demigods also have gurus. That is, and Brihaspati is called the priest of the demigod. And um, it is said that Dronacharya was a spatial incarnation. Sukracharya was a spiritual master of the demons, and Brihaspati challenged him. His son is Kacha, and he delivered the fire weapon first to Bharadwaja Muni. He begot 6 sons, like the fire god, by his wife Chandramasi, one of the reputed stars. So all these stars, all these celestial, I mean, bodies that we see, they are all personalities. Never think that, I mean, all these things are there. The earth that we are living today is personified. Is She's called Bhumi Devi. There's a personality of this planet. Similarly, all the stars that we are seeing in the space or in the sky, they are all personalities actually. So they are not just twinkling objects there without any personality to it. He could travel in space, and therefore he could present himself even in the planets of Ramaloka and Indraloka. He advised the king of the heaven, Indra, about conquering the demons. Once he cursed Indra, who thus had to become a hawk on the earth and was unwilling to return to heaven. Such is the power of the attraction of the illusory energy. Even a hawk does not wish to part with its earthly possessions in exchange of a heavenly kingdom. I mean, this is real. Some of us, we are attached to our material facilities, not thinking that there's something higher than this. Therefore, because we do not know, or even if we know, we are still attached to this. Like, sometimes commonly we say that people want to go to heaven, but they do not want to die, right? But then if you do not die in a sense that if you not let go of all these material possessions, if you not die from this world in a sense of, I mean, being detached with all these material things, how then are you going to attain that of, of the heavenly realm? And therefore, it is essential. It's essential that we try as much as possible to. It is essential that we try as much as possible uh, want to actually let go of our material things and actually connect ourselves with the divine, with Krishna. And that is what sometimes we refer to in the Bible as being in the world but not of the world. So a hog is a stool eater, and he's very satisfied with eating stool. And if we tell him that there's cake which is much sweeter than stool, he would argue, and he would want to still enjoy eating the stool and swimming within it. So, I mean, that is the misfortune that people do not really understand. That, I mean, there is something much more higher than this world that we are really struggling so much to. I mean, look at, even if we want to cook a meal, how much of a struggle. Like, I mean, in Ghana, fufu, cooking fufu. I mean, for some people, it is a ritual. It's kind of a ritual. Every day they have to take fufu. But for me, it looks like a very tedious activity. You have to cook, then one will have to be there pounding and all this stuff, and just to, I mean, have a taste of something. And so, in our material pursuits, we have a lot of time. We can invest a lot of time to do what you want to do. But when it comes to something which is based on a higher principle, which has to do with our spiritual life, we create a lot of excuses. I do not have time. I do not like this, like that. But then Prabhupada here is comparing that to that of a hawk in the stool. He will not trade the eating stool to actually enjoy heavenly pleasure. And that is quite that is misfortune actually. Okay, so on that note, we will end here as in the reading. And if there is something you'd want to ask, if there's any question or comments, please feel free to ask, and we'll be uh, very grateful to reciprocate. Okay, Ram J4 can say, probably what should couple look out for before intimacy? Well, the question is, what are you looking out for? What are you actually expecting? What are you doing? We should be in the known of what we are doing. And because we know Krishna and Bhagavad Gita says sex life which is not against religious principles, because we should understand that intimacy is actually a religious principle. And then when the activities are going on, we are we should be conscious first that we are bringing forth life, and we should not take it as an exercise or as a game or something that we want to be the final enjoyer. But then we should have the consciousness that we are actually engaging in a devotional activity to God to help bring forth such quality souls who is going to help make the world a better place. And to have that consciousness, it is prescribed that the environment has to be quite suitable. One has to devotees has to chant like 32 or 64 rounds within that day. And it is possible that the couple should should fast for the whole day. And then one thing also is that um sometimes right after marriage people want to give birth, but then it is also recommended that if you want to have fine children, it is important that the couple will have to undergo some sort of austerities for some months or even possibly a year before they actually undergo intimacy. This actually gives them some power or the affinity, the quality to also be able to attract wonderful souls. So that is also another one recommendation, that it's not that after you marry your wife, you think that after marriage or after the wedding ceremony, we say honeymoon, therefore now you are mine. And so I have to enjoy you or anything like that. But then if they have the ability to actually restrain themselves from intimacy for even let's say a year, and then work on themselves, purify themselves, and then they come under the conclusion. Actually, to say that even when one wants to give birth, one has to consult a spiritual master. That this is like my wife and I, we want to now bring forth the child into this universe. Therefore, we need your permission to be able to. That is kind of a prayer we are praying to God, that we are looking for. We are not just doing sexual activity because we want to enjoy each other, but we want to do it as an offering to you. We want to bring forth souls with which you would bring forth the sanity of this world. Therefore, we are begging for your blessings. We are begging for your mercy, to be able to undergo this service on your behalf. And in so doing, you will not be able to, you realize how much of a powerful being that you bring in this world. So there's actually a false science to it, and that it does not end with when after all, it does not end after the intimacy. When the conception comes, when the child actually comes into the womb, there are so many things that the husband has to do for the wife. There's so many things the wife has to do. And at the point of delivery also there are activities which is required. And it's called some scars at every stage of life. There are some activity or purificatory activity that the wife and the husband and the child, and they have to put the child, and they themselves have to be in, to actually bring the child to the platform where he's going to, because when we are born we carry some impressions of our past lives into this lifetimes. So these purificatory activities helps the child to actually wipe off, to cleanse some of these past impressions and give him the fresh starts. And not just a fresh, but then a divine starts to actually re-establish a new karma. So on the basic terms, that is what I would say. But there is a book called Gapodan Samskar, or from the Srimad Bhagavatam. It gives a very deep, I mean, deep, I mean, knowledge of this subject matter. And that is what we say memaku, when men fellowship. This is what we are supposed to train men to understand what it takes to be a man. And this is what you're supposed to train women. This is what they are supposed to learn. This is what we are supposed to train them, and not just to gossip and talk about how beautiful one woman is or how handsome one man is, or all this stuff. Uh, so that is why it's important. That premature stage of life is quite important, because during that stage we actually assimilate a lot, we take a lot of knowledge, and that knowledge helps us to actually live life in its essence. You understand? Prabhu, what should couple look out for before basis of okay, we've talked about this. So I think we can end here if there are no questions. Um, if there are no questions in this regard, we can, and Prabhu, assuming one had an incorrigible child, what can be done that that child turn him or her? Well, yes, I mean, we always say Krishna is only the one who can change our karma. But um, yes, of course, we have to start by training a child. Then, with that kind of, it requires a lot of effort. We have to put a lot of effort. We have to actually pray for the child. We have to actually take the child through disciplinary. That doesn't mean that you have to rip the child always, but then we have to always get him closer to God. You have to always put him in an environment where he's actually going to have, I mean, people surrounding him who are God fearing, who actually, I mean, have his best interest at heart. You not only expose the child to God on Sundays, but every time you give the child opportunity to actually realize himself as a part and parcel of God, as a child of God. And one thing which is also quite important is that as a father or a mother, we have to live a life of example. Like, you don't know, tell a child like this and you are doing like that. That is what sometimes happen. The parents become irresponsible themselves, but then they're expecting their child to come out as a different thing. But there's an adage, say, "Okoton wanoma," right? Your child is actually a reflection of yourself. So it is important that we also become, I mean, role models, that we live quite an exemplary life. And naturally, we bring the children closer to us. We do not give them out for the world to train them, but then we should train our child in how we want the child to be. But then the world now is designed in a way that, like, for example, the child will leave home by 8 o'clock and go to school and return like 5 o'clock. So you realize, like, 8 hours of, I mean, a significant portion of his life is being spent out there. So if with the small time that we have in a child, you do not really invest in the child's spiritual life, it will happen that they will be kind of turned outside there. And now the schools are called slaughterhouses. Why? Because we take our children to school in order to train them, but then what are we training them? What are we training them in? They come out to be something altogether, monsters that we cannot handle. So we should be careful about this also. What It's not just people think that, I mean, taking your child to school means that you have to give them the high, you take them to big schools and all that. That is not the point. But then we should be cautious of the morality of the teachers. A teacher is not somebody who is just teaching about English, maths, and science, but in his character, his moral values should also be upright. I don't know whether GES is looking into that. That if we are training teachers, are we training them with also morality? Because that is what is quite essential, not the science and math quizzes. You might be expert in science and math quiz, but then if morally we are quite low, we are down morally, what is the point of the science and the maths if we don't have any moral upbringing? You understand? And these teachers carry a lot of significant time with our children, because sometimes also even you tell a child like this and they'll tell you, no, my teacher said that. Right? Have you experienced that before? You tell the teacher, oh, this is like your child, this is, and you say, no, but my teacher said this, and he's going to listen to what the teacher says. Okay, sure. Because the teacher is having a significant part of his life. So it is quite necessary that as parents we own our children. Own our children doesn't mean that we impose our I mean our selfish desires on them, but then we try to we try to draw a borderline between um our relationship with them and also the relationship that they have on the outside world. And we groom and we train them when we have time with them, and not just leave them hanging for the world to train them. Because after what can they give them? It's only crazy stuff. Hare Krishna Guneshwar Prabhu. Thank you. So Kicks Home is saying, as every child really a reflection of the parents? Yes, most of the case. They says the apple does not fall far from the tree, right? But sometimes we want to play the blame game. No, I was not like this when I was a child. Yes, because that is karma. You were thinking that you were like stubborn as a child, but then karma will tell you that you're going to bring you somebody which is quite much more crazy than you were as a child. So yes, as parents, of course, we cannot fully blame ourselves to the kind of the nature of our child. But like I said, ultimately it boils down to us also, because like I said, when the point of procreation, that interjection, what actually is in the consciousness will affect the child that we are bringing forward. And even while the child is within the womb, the activities which is going on, there are some quite irresponsible men who do not properly take care of their wives when they are pregnant. I've actually from I don't have much of experience in that, but for what I have actually experienced with the people that I have met so far is that most men do not really take care of their women properly when they are pregnant, because in that stage they are quite vulnerable, and the child is also vulnerable, and the child becomes susceptible to whatever emotion that the father or the mother is feeling. And sometimes we give birth, and like I said, the boy will tell the wife will tell the husband that I am pregnant, and the husband will be like, oh, not again. Oh, Krishna. Then so that anxiety, that emotion will be transferred to the child. The child will feel not wanted. So in the psyche, in the subconsciousness, you feel like this, I'm kind of a trouble, a burden, and it will have impact on the consciousness of the child. So you do not become a parent if you are not ready. It is actually said that if one cannot save his dependent from going to hell, then one should not be a leader, one should not be a parent, one should not be a spiritual guide, one should not be a king or take up all these leadership roles if we cannot save our dependents from going wayward. So like I said, we are responsible to our children. That is why when any child acts in a crazy way, they will say, "Whose father is this? Whose child is this? Who is your father? Who is your mother?" Because there is an expectation that the father and the mother are supposed to groom the child in a way that becomes appealing to society. So it is a big responsibility. Like I said, if you cannot, don't enter. It is said abstinence is the best. But then if you if you want to really enter into it, then you have to really, be willing to take full responsibility. Yes. So that is what I can say, Keksomi. That is what I can say. But in some instances, parents calm, but their children are hyper. Yes, that is karma. You may be calm now, but then in the previous life you're not so calm. So sometimes for sometimes some children are given to us as punishments by the laws of nature. And actually, I don't know, this might sound weird to some of us. Some of our children, they are were our enemies in our past lives. Bombshell. They were enemies in the past life, and nature somehow or the other, by the intelligence of mature nature, they have now come as our children. So for such a child, what good will come out of it? He's only going to give you trouble. He's going to always your BP will always be like shooting like spaceship, and he will always give you anxiety and all that, because actually that child was the enemy in the past life. You had also done something crazy to that soul, and therefore to pay back, he's come quite intimate as a child. And sometimes they will come as a wife, sometimes also as the mother-in-law. And then they'll give us all this trouble. So I mean that is karma. Karma is quite an interesting phenomena. It's sometimes difficult to understand its complexities. So yes, you might think that you are calm and your child is hyper, but I mean this is karmic arrangements that we are getting what we deserve actually. But in some cases, the parents are calm, but the child are hyper. Is it karma? Is karma just? Yes, actually, that is karma. Worship our Africa traditional worship. What war is that? I cannot understand. Af- African traditional. Or if I understand, you are thinking that we are talking about something which is not traditional. Perhaps you are new here. We don't talk about anything which is not traditional. What we are talking about is what we are talking about outside. Is it something that Africans do not relate to it? I don't know who you are, but I don't think that what we are talking about is something which is specific to Africans or Europeans or whatever. So perhaps you were late, so you could not get the full context. So thank you very much for joining, and I think it's safe we can end the class today. And we are almost here for an hour, which I think is enough to digest what we have talked about. And yes, so thank you very much for joining, and may we all be blessed by the best. And Hare Krishna. Granta Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande Haripal. Thank you for joining.